All right. You guys hear me? Let's see. Let's find out if the audio is working. It seems like it is. Good morning and welcome to the Q&A session for Rebellion as well as for Boundary Bootcamp. We'll start out today letting people join on here. Give everybody a few more minutes, but it's been a pretty eventful weekend for me. There's my little... All right, there we go. We'll pull this thing down. Still learning how to do all this technology. If you want to join me live, feel free to hop in to the link I posted online. It'll give you all the data you need. You can actually get in the studio with me and ask me questions live on the air here. So let me know if that's something you want to do. You just joined and I'll let you in. So in the meantime, this is a Q&A. So let me get started here in about 2 more minutes. We'll let more people join up. Yeah. So last 2 days has been a lot of fun. We got to teach Rebellion, how to stop people pleasing. It's probably one of my favorite things to teach. It's just been a kind of a wild ride. So for those of you who managed to get in that and be there, it was really cool to have you. And so today we're going to talk about just a little bit about what's coming. We have the Boundary Bootcamp. So if you don't know who I am, I'm Nick. I'm the founder of Boundary Bootcamp and this brand of thepeopledispleaser.com. And I think the most important thing that I could share with you guys about how this came to be is I used to be a really, really bad people pleaser and a drunk. And through that kind of, through that move to change, I think what happened for me was I'd been through quite a lot of trauma and I'd had quite a lot of bad experiences. And I didn't really know how to heal from any of it. And as I kind of went through that and started to realize that, it wasn't just that I had trauma, it's that the trauma had kind of created in me this need to make everybody happy because I was so afraid to be liked or not liked that I generally speaking, couldn't navigate the world around me. And so as I started to change and grow, I was able to overcome a lot of that. And some of it still sticks with me, which I think is partly why the work I do is so important to me. But for the most part, the steps that I outlined in the Boundary Bootcamp were the steps that I took to become the person I am today, right? So what I hope you guys get out of today is kind of an understanding of what people pleasing is, the importance of setting boundaries, and identifying your boundary challenges is another massive piece of this. We're going to do some strategies to maintain boundaries, and then we're going to talk about how my Boundary Bootcamp enforces all that. So first things first, we want to talk through what is a people pleaser, right? So in simple terms, it's a person with an inability to tolerate other people's normal negative emotions. It's somebody that, for the most part, is conflict avoidant, is always trying to make other people happy, even at their own detriment, right? And very often when we make other people happy, that's fine. It's not to say that you can't do that, but when you do it consistently over a long enough timeline, you start to develop it as a habit, almost an addiction. And you end up doing things like, there's some signs like saying yes when you mean to say no, avoiding conflict at all costs, feeling resentful, and not expressing your feelings, basing your worth very much on external modi. So like on other people's opinions, and really having an external locus of control. So you're a person that looks outside of themselves to find value, right? The impact that can have on, on something like the holidays that are coming up. It's like, people pleasers tend to amplify around the holidays. So they're giving more, they're doing more stuff, they're going to more events, and they're largely becoming miserable. So, and it takes this massive toll on people, and creates a lot of burnout and frustration and weakened relationships. And it only increases that loss of self-identity. So when we think about that, we really have to start thinking about, how do we set boundaries in the real world, especially around the holidays. So the importance of that is, first we need to understand what are boundaries, right? A boundary is basically your guidelines for what you will tolerate, what you will not tolerate, what you will accept, and what you will not accept. That's pretty much it, guys. And if you don't have them initially, it feels really, really clunky, and it kind of creates in you this feeling of discomfort. A lot of people liken this to guilt. So they'll say, I feel really guilty when I set my boundaries. And very often it's not guilt that you're feeling at all. So the challenge, of course, is, oh my goodness, I just learned that the email had the wrong link. Laura, thank you for telling me that. So that's interesting. Anyway, let me send out another one. Give me 2 seconds, guys. I apologize. It's been a technological disaster for me the last couple of days as I try and navigate these new systems. So, marketing. Give me 2 seconds, guys. I'll have this sent out to everybody. Two seconds. All right. I don't know what's happening here. All right. So we'll let a few more people join here. All right, back to what we were talking about. My apologies. I got a little sideways there. Good morning, everybody. Hopefully people will be able to join us here shortly. Let me see. I don't need an invite for that. I need. All right. All right. So as I was talking through boundaries, but you know what? People are probably just going to have to find me here and on Instagram. So it'll be fine. So anyway, going back to the importance of setting boundaries, when we talk about boundaries around the holidays, it really is a delineator of what you will tolerate and what you will not tolerate, what you can accept and what you cannot accept, right? So when you have boundaries around the holidays, what you'll notice is that you have a much higher level of self-respect, higher level of confidence. You'll be stronger and more balanced. In your interactions with your family and the people that you love, which is really important because the holidays has a tendency to really screw with our emotional systems and kind of when you're a people pleaser, it makes you do a lot more than you're actually capable of, which can be great in some contexts, but for the most part, it's really detrimental to how you show up in the world, right? And then boundaries are going to give you more freedom, right? A lot of people think that boundaries are like a rule book, when in reality, what it does is gives you prioritization, right? It's not about putting yourself first. It's about making yourself equal to the people around you. So in the end, it ends up, increasing your freedom and decreasing your stress, right? So when you have to kind of shift this narrative from the boundaries being mean or selfish to boundaries being acts of respect for yourself and other people, right? It's taking yourself and putting you on the same timeline and the same level of respect and love as you give everybody else, right? So there's a lot of challenges in that, of course, which is how do you learn to say no, right? How do you go through the motions of reprogramming all of these defaults, um, and how you live your life? And I think when we think about that and how do you navigate family dynamics and then how do you deal with feeling guilty and then how do you not overcommit, it all kind of boils down to this obligated feeling of I'm supposed to be everything to everyone, and that's incredibly toxic. It ends up wearing you out, and you end up feeling obligated to give your time and your energy and your money, even beyond your own means, right? So when you start thinking about boundaries over the holidays, the first one is you have to pick an area in which to start practicing, right? So one of the things that people do wrong is they try and set their boundaries, like all of them all at once. And very much like everything else, it's boundaries is a skill set. It's something you learn. If you weren't kind of brought up with it, you practice it over time, and it becomes a part of your DNA. But until that happens, you have to start small, right? So one thing you can do is start saying no to like extra obligations. Maybe you won't stop and pick up the napkins for mom on Thanksgiving, or maybe you won't cook the extra pie. Maybe you have to say no to yourself, right? Maybe you won't buy that extra Christmas present just because you feel that need inside of yourself, right? So it's about celebrating those wins too. So when you do that and you start to, you have to recognize when you do it, and then you have to be able to say, okay, well, that was awesome. That starts to build your confidence in this way, and it allows you to be much clearer in your communication. So a great example of this is like, let's say there's two holiday parties on one night, or there's just one that you don't want to go to. Rather than saying I can't make it because I've got other commitments, or I can't because I don't feel good, or calling in at the last second and saying you won't be there, the best thing you can do is just be really honest, which is I won't be able to make it, but I hope it goes really well, right? It's a kind way of saying, I'm not coming, but I hope you have fun, right? Or if you're in a conversation, or if somebody is kind of bumping up against something, it's just I'm not comfortable with that, but thank you for asking, right? So you have to learn to handle pushback too, when you do these kinds of things. And resistance is actually very normal in new boundary setting because people are kind of adjusting to this new dynamic, and you have to learn to stand firm without guilt or over explaining. So, when I was first kind of learning how to do boundaries, I would like say a thing and then I'd talk and talk and talk. Well, because of this and that and the other thing. Now, when I don't want to do something, I just simply say, I'm not prepared to do that, or I don't want to do that. And if they ask why, I just restate the sentence, which is, I don't want to do that. That's not a personal issue. It's not something that is needs to be rehashed. It's just I don't care for that activity, or to show up for that thing. And then finally, in the steps of really good boundary setting, you need to start to prioritize self-care, right? So remember that your boundaries are they're an essential part of protecting your mental and emotional health. And there's ways that you can do that, right? Setting alone time that's non-negotiable. So if you're a person like me that's kind of introvert in an extrovert's brain, there's moments where you just need to take a breather, and you need to be able to give yourself that, through your own bill of rights. So kind of checking in with yourself, and saying, okay, am I stressed? Am I feeling weird? Whatever. Then just go to a different room, or maybe step outside, and kind of enjoy the process of calming down, and then you can re-enter the party, or you can re-enter the situation. But taking time for yourself, even if it's 5 minutes, can make all the difference, right? So, and one of the ways, and this brings me to, how does this boundary boot camp thing help people, right? I designed it to be a transformative program, right? It helps people pleasers regain their lives, and build these kind of ironclad boundaries that they're not necessarily negotiable, but they're not set in stone, right? So it's about learning how to structure and guide yourself through these processes, and starting in the holidays so you can move through kind of the new year with confidence is really important. But also, it's like, if you were to do this well, there's a good to fair chance you'll have the best holidays that you've ever had, right? And we're talking about mostly around Christmas and New Year's, and all the other celebrations, whatever religion you may be. I don't really celebrate anything, but the the whole point of this is that you can actually have more fun with your families. You can actually enjoy the time better because you are giving to yourself what you need, right? So, and in that we learn, it's kind of a building, it's building step by step. What is a boundary, right? How do they operate? How do you hold on to it? What does it mean to have them, right? And then you learn how to communicate in a more assertive way. You learn to handle guilt, pushback, and manipulation. You're maintaining over time, even with challenging people, right? Because at the end of the day, we're talking about taking action to change the way you show up. We're not talking about a theory, right? So I tailored this program for people to stop waiting for permission to prioritize themselves, and to really design, in fact, how do we show up and be who you want to be, right? So at this point, I'm curious, what kind of questions do you guys have? I'm looking at Instagram right now, and I'm going to start there, and then we'll see what we have over on Facebook and everything else. Who has a question for me? Good morning, Tony. Good morning, Deborah. Good morning, Laura. Looks like we're just going to have to roll with what we got. So who has a question for me about Boundary Bootcamp? Any questions? How can I learn to respect myself enough to fix my shortcomings? This is a great question, Tony. It's you are doing this in reverse. What you're asking me is, how do I learn to respect myself to fix my shortcomings? What's real is you need to ask the question, how do I fix my shortcomings so that I can learn more about how to respect myself? And the thing is that if you're saying fix my shortcomings, the challenge in that is you're talking about multiple issues at a single given moment. So, Tony, if you have shortcomings, write them down, pick the one you most want to fix first, and then fix that. And then you fix the next one, and then you fix the next one, and then you fix the next one. So you're seeing yourself as the problem, rather than seeing yourself as having some problems. And the problem is, like, if you really want to fix your shortcomings, it's not about learning to respect yourself first. It's about fixing your shortcomings so you respect yourself. Um, I hope that makes sense. Who else has a question? Nobody on this side. Let's see what we got over on Instagram. Let's see. I feel like my people pleaser side often feels like a character or a role that switches. Um, Kay, that's a really interesting one. I really like that one. Hang on. All right. So Kay over on Instagram asked, or not really asked, but asserted. I feel like my people pleaser side often feels like a character or a role that switches when I'm not in the presence of others. Um, that's probably 100% accurate, Kay. The reality is, you are wearing a mask. It's not the version of you that's the version of you that's alive and well is not that version. Because what's happened is that you've started to kind of overlap in your life. So you've got all of these different modalities of living. A people pleaser tends to be very two-faced. And it's not out of a malevolence. It's really because they're protecting their soft underbelly, right? So when you put on the mask, you become a certain person, and then when you're home with your family or perhaps just by yourself, you become resentful and angry and sad and lonely. And then when you're all with people, very often you'll feel sad and lonely because you don't know you, right? So it's interesting that you say, like, you feel like you're a different person. It's because you are, right, and you're not showing up in a way that's authentic to you. So, a great question. Okay. Is it possible to rewire your brain when overcoming people pleasing, or is it just repeating behaviors and using will to stay on? So, is it possible to rewire your brain when overcoming people pleasing, or is it just repeating behaviors and using will to stay on track? Initially, it's will. I think everybody has a little bit of a people pleaser in them. Like, nobody wants the world at large to dislike them. Nobody wants to feel like they're not welcome in society. So, part of this kind of pleasing behavior is that part of this pleasing behavior is normal. It's like being agreeable is okay. And so when you think of it in that context, what does it mean? It just simply means that you're allowed to make people happy. You're allowed to, bring people joy. You're allowed to be pleasing in many regards. But when it begins to overrun your life, then that's where the problem happens, right? So, is it possible to rewire your brain? Yes, in my opinion, and that is an opinion. I'm not a doctor, but over the last 5 years, I've been able to really move this from kind of an unconscious competence place to an unconscious incompetence place to an unconscious competence. Like, I now am able to say the displeasing thing. I'm now able to course correct when I feel like I'm going down that path of being altruistic in a way that is detrimental to myself. So, is it possible to rewire your brain? Yes. Does it take some time? Yes. Will it happen in an 8-week boot camp? Probably not, but it'll certainly help. So if you want to know more about that, just pop onto the website below and go to myboundarybootcamp.com. So, I was a pleaser and I stopped being a nice guy. How do you hold the line? Practice, Stefan. Hi, Nick. I was a people pleaser and I stopped being the nice guy. How do I hold the line? Great question from Stefan Vander. Yeah. Stefan, I'm just going with Stefan. Not being a people pleaser and being a people pleaser are interesting because they're both skill sets. So being a people pleaser is a skill set, and not people pleasing is also a skill set, which means you get good at anything you practice, including not practicing, right? So it's about practice, man. Like you're going to have to just keep going. And slowly but surely over time, you'll get better and better and you'll eventually hold the line on your own. Right. And Holly asked a question. How long does the boot camp take to get through? The boot camp is 8 weeks. I teach it live every Saturday at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time or Mountain Daylight Time, whatever Mountain Time happens to be at that time. Whatever Mountain Time happens to be at that time. So anyway, it's an 8 week long course. We cover a ton of different stuff. Everything from learning to be assertive, to setting your boundaries, learning to say no, writing your own personal bill of rights. It's all kind of built around this idea of how do you have more fun, and enjoy your life more through setting boundaries. So it takes about 8 weeks. There's about an hour a week of calls. So we have 2 Q&As that I've set up in there, and then so those are in addition to the calls, and then we also have homework, which I've built these assignments in a really kind of fantastic and torturous way, which makes me very happy. If you want to know more about it, you can log on to myboundarybootcamp.com. It'll tell you all the information. So there you have it. Thank you for asking, Holly. Do you have suggestions for dealing with peripheral pressures like I'm setting a boundary with someone and now people around them are reaching out to me to hang out with that person? When you say you set a boundary with a person, what it sounds like is you let a person go out of your life. And I would set the boundaries in yourself, which is to say, I am not interested in hanging out with that person. And asking me that will cause me to not want to hang out with you as well. Right. What you're talking about is, in the narcissistic sense, they probably deployed some flying monkeys to help them in their quest to be your friend or whatever. Elaine says she finds it hard to recognize she's people pleasing until afterward. That's pretty common. And the good news is that means you do recognize it. At least you recognize it. When you recognize it is kind of irrelevant. The best thing you can do is start to course correct after the fact, which is, so if you say yes to something you mean to say no to, for instance, just call and change your mind. Or if you commit to something you can't actually do, just call and say so. It's after the fact that you can make changes very often. And through that, you start to make changes faster. So you'll notice faster, you'll get better at it. And then the eventuality is you just won't make as many commitments and get to that place, right? How can I set a boundary with my teen daughter when she obviously hates and disrespects me? Libby, that's a great question. You don't set boundaries with your teen daughter. You set boundaries within yourself. And we talk about this in my boundary boot camp a lot, which is boundaries are not set with other people. They're set within you, right? So if your daughter's speaking to you in a disrespectful way, for instance, one thing you might say is, we'll call her Dana. Dana, I'm not going to speak to people that treat me this way. Let's take 15 minutes and calm down and we can revisit this. Right? It's just exiting the conversation. Remember that boundaries are there to delineate what you will accept and not accept, tolerate, not tolerate within your own emotional frame. That said, if your daughter's being disrespectful, just say, daughter, you're being very, your tone is seemingly disrespectful to me this morning. I don't appreciate that. And I'm going to end this conversation. And then just step out of the conversation. If she follows suit, or whatever, just restate. I'm ending the conversation for the moment. We can pick this up in 15 minutes after everybody's calmed down. Right. So Mary Childerson said, I learned as a very young child, if people weren't happy, they were extremely hurtful, abusive. As an adult, IFS, I don't know what ifs, IFS, I don't know what you're meaning there, Mary. Let's see. How do you let go of the worry that someone won't like you if you're no longer people pleasing? Kay, you really got it bad today, huh? I appreciate all the questions. They're great questions. The answer to that question is you don't. First, you need to know that you're not feeling guilt. You're feeling discomfort or worry. So are you worried about people not liking you? Of course you are. And you're probably going to always want that, right? There's something you have to understand about this is like, If they only like you because you don't have boundaries or you're a people pleaser, then they don't actually like you. So liking someone and using someone are not the same. And, if you're being used by a person, they don't actually like you. They're just benefiting from you being you. And that's not, I don't suspect that's how you want to live your life. Um, and so, I would say to you, I would submit to you in this case that um, you need to be more cognizant of that and realize that if you're people pleasing all the time, you're not actually showing up and no one knows who you are for real. Let's see. All right. I'm going to hop off of Instagram and hop over back to my live feed, see what we got over here. All right. Great question from Deborah. How do I set boundaries with my grandbabies, ages 12 and 16, towards another family member who are being abusive by shaming and guilting grandkids' behavior? Deborah, I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but again, you can't set boundaries for your grandkids. Like that's you meddling in other people's lives. Um, the only thing you can do is not, I mean, you can set boundaries internally, but you don't set boundaries for your grandkids. Your grandkids kids need to be taught boundaries so they can set themselves. But you getting involved in that, in terms of how do you set boundaries for other people, that's not going to work. Ever. Boundaries are internal guidelines for how you show up in the world. That's it. It's not about, I'm gonna set this for my grandkids. You can, for instance, let's say their parents or somebody are being abusive or calling them names or whatever, you can simply say, hey, I'm not going to tolerate you calling your children names in my home. Right. So at that point, you ask them to leave. You're free to leave, but we're not calling people names in my home. Is a way that you could set boundaries in your house, right, in your frame. But to set them for your grandkids, it's not going to happen. But good question, though. All right, back to Instagram, where all of my questions seem. Internal family systems therapy. Got it. So we're talking about basically family therapy. The therapy world has gotten so specific about what we do. It's kind of crazy, frankly. But all that said, I don't remember what your question was, and I can't find it, so you'll have to ask me again. Now that we know the characteristics of people pleasing, the way we lie, manipulate, hurt other people to meet our needs, it makes us a selfish piece of shit. My God. I mean, that's a little aggressive. I don't know that you're a selfish piece of shit. But what I might suggest is that if you recognize that you have a behavior that you want to change, it's up to you to change it. Right. So one thing that you can start doing is learning to say no. And just by doing that more often, you're going to be less committed. You're going to have, kind of less trouble in your life, and everything's going to go slightly better. And by the way, it makes us feel like a selfish piece of shit is an interesting way of saying that, because your feelings are not fact. You are not a selfish piece of shit. You have a problem. You are not the problem. Right. So, or better yet, you have problems. You are not a problem. So you are not, as a person, you are not a problem. You have some problems to fix. Right. And by understanding that delineation, you're able to have a bit more grace in the system. Right. You're welcome, Stefan. I started a new job and my people pleasing is being triggered because I have a 3 month, I'm struggling. Your people pleasing isn't being triggered because you have a 3 month orientation. Your people pleasing is being triggered because you're a people pleaser. Good to fair chance you've always been a people pleaser. And so stop blaming it on the job and start looking at the behavior, right? If you're struggling with it, like if you're trying to please everybody, I think it's clear that you need to understand what your job is and then do your job to the best of your ability. Like do what's required of you and then leave the rest to other people. So, yeah, definitely Boundary Boot Camp would be helpful for you. I work with a lot of folks in Boundary Boot Camp who struggle with boundaries at work, very specifically. So, Kay, you're back. It's good to see you again. feels like it's more selfish since we're the ones self-sacrificing for others. Um, or I feel like it's more selfish since we're, yeah. Um, I think I think that's common among people who kind of identify with my message around people pleasing, that you uh, probably do feel like it's pretty selfish, and that's okay. You're gonna feel a little selfish as you start to change, and you start to kind of take your life back. So, Kay, you are on fire today. I'm looking forward to meeting you in Boundary Bootcamp. If you don't sign up, I'm going to be shocked. Again, guys, if you want to sign up for Boundary Bootcamp, it's just myboundarybootcamp.com is where we have the site. So I feel like people pleasing is tied into my controlling others' impressions that they get of me. It's hard to give up that control. Yeah, it is. It's 100% tied to that. It will always be tied to that. And, like it or not, people pleasers are, this is all based in control. It's not, it's not the same as narcissism, but it's on the same through line. Narcissism by its default is, sort of defined in many ways by grandiosity and a feeling of superiority. Whereas people pleasing is the inferiority. Narcissism also rated it or sort of rank and file in that way. But the thing I would say about people pleasing is it's something you can solve, right? You are allowed to let go. So when you start to think in that way, of course, okay, it's like, are you trying to control everyone around you? The answer is absolutely yes. So is a narcissist. This is why so often the covert narcissist and the people pleaser get mistaken for one another. Also, it's not, not for nothing. If you pour alcohol on top of people pleasing, you'll generally speaking get a narcissist. So it's, kind of a catch-22 in that way. I've seen a couple of posts identifying people pleasing as a form of manipulation itself. It is. I know, I've seen me do it. That's good to know. Awesome. Glad I could help. Going back over to our live stream. Oh, there we go. Mike McShane, how are you, brother? I can just comment here. I can attest to the friends that benefit from being a people pleaser. Yeah, just had an incident where I asserted a boundary and have someone I thought was a friend walk away from the relationship. That's not a surprise. When you think about how often that happens, when you assert a boundary, I had a really great client whose brother was always asking him for money. And he would just give it to him, and then he would get pissed off. Then he'd give it to him, and he'd get pissed off. He was always getting pissed off at him. And finally, he said to his brother, "I'm happy to help you with this, but I'm going to need you to. But this is a loan." And he was like, "I will loan you the money, but you're going to have to pay me back, and we're going to do it as a structured payment. And I'm going to take a loan out against your house, and like this is how we're going to do this." Right. And the guy was like, "Well, that's not helping." And he's like, "Okay, well, that's the version of help that I'm prepared to give you." And his brother stopped talking to him for like 3 months. I see it happen in friendships as well. So I think there's a time and a place where we have to realize that not everybody who knows us is for us, and certainly not everybody who doesn't know us is for us. And that's unfortunate. But if somebody's been taking advantage of you for long enough, then this is what happens. And Mike, I hope to see you in the next boot camp, brother. You're always invited, and we'll see what happens. Tony, let's see. My past of people pleasing has put me into obligations that breaking them will affect my family. Wow. But if I don't break them, I'll be suffering. Okay. So, yeah, probably breaking some of your commitments is going to impact a lot of your life. But you said it best. It's like, I'll be suffering, continuing a cycle of people pleasing. So, the unfortunate news is that's the world you built around you. And now it's time for you to not do that anymore. Let's see. We have any more questions over on Instagram. How do you deal with the family members that have narcissistic traits as a people pleaser? You set boundaries. Very, very strong boundaries. The best way to do that is, developing a Bill of Rights and understanding what you'll tolerate and not tolerate. I talk about that a lot in the Boundary Bootcamp too. And again, it's scrolling at the bottom of the screen there, myboundarybootcamp.com. One of those Christmas gifts you can give to yourself that will be helpful for many, many moons. It's also worth noting that you're allowed to be in that boot camp for as long as you want. One thing that I did include in the boot camp as well this time is that you get 90 days free to the community, which is really, really cool. It's a community of humans all trying to do better in their lives. It's one thing that I really love about the Boundary Boot Camp and how it shows up and how it operates. And I think you'll be surprised and pleased, by being in that. So, remember that, as a people pleaser, you weren't created in a vacuum, and solving it is not going to be done alone either. So it's really important that you get into a group and you learn how to do this on your own, right? With others. So I like to allow relationships to take a natural course. How can I recognize when I'm starting people pleasing and I'm not setting healthy boundaries? It's a really interesting question. It's what you're talking about kind of dives into the vein of emotional intelligence. And we do talk about that actually in week 1 of my Boundary Boot Camp. But basically, think of the first time that you ever wanted to kiss somebody, and then think of the first time you thought you were going to die. Both of those feelings in your body are going to be about the same. So when you start to people please, there's going to be a twinge of that when you're being inauthentic to yourself. And through that, once you're able to identify and feel that, then you'll be able to start to course correct more accurately. So, but again, that's something I speak to very well in the first week and second week of Boundary Boot Camp, which is how do you recognize when you're people pleasing, and then how do you set healthy boundaries, right? When someone is working in quotes on their issues, for me, therapy, what is your opinion on forming relationships with the opposite sex? How long should someone wait? Great question. How long should someone wait before forming relationships with the opposite sex if they're working on their issues? Short answer to that is as long as you feel it's appropriate. A lot of people have these kind of thoughts that you're supposed to be totally healthy before you meet somebody. Well, that's fucking absurd. You're never going to be totally healthy, number one. Number two, if you fall for somebody, you fall for somebody. I would say actively seeking relationship, maybe I'd give it a year. But if something pops into your frame that you really like, and there's somebody that you want to be a friend, that you want to date, then, and it happens organically, then go for it. Let them know, you don't have to trauma dump on them, but, tell them who you are and be real. And if that's not something they can get down with, that's not the right person for you. So Eliza, I think Elizarga, maybe. Is that how I say that? Anyway, I think that would be my counsel on that is as soon as you feel ready, you're ready. Right. I wanted to take a moment to thank you for your amazing content. Oh, thank you. My posts always uplift and make your day. That's really cool. Thank you, and happy Thanksgiving back to you. I appreciate that. Let's see what we got in the feed here. Oh, got a few more. I am honestly scared to death to confront this, but I know my peace requires it. How do I overcome the shame and guilt about this? I would need to know more about the situation to speak to that in a more meaningful way. But guilt and shame are very often linked to this idea that I'm not good enough, or I'm not enough, or I'm bad. And that's a belief system that's hiding in your heart. And it's one of those things that you have to root out and ferret out to be more effective in your life as a whole. So the thing I would say to you is, if you're feeling guilt and shame around having to make a decision that's probably going to negatively impact some other people, that's probably kind of normal. You may not get over that. More than anything, I think you're afraid. And, the interesting thing about fear is that it is the only thing that is required for courage to exist. So that said, I would just say, be courageous, and life is going to do what it does. So. All right. Doesn't look like we have any more people asking questions over on Instagram. Elizabeth, great question. Thank you for asking it. Let's see. All right. Who else has questions for me today? Going once? No? No more questions? All right. I'm going to stay on for a few more minutes, see if anybody else has anything they want to ask. And then we'll wrap it up, and I'll tell you how to get involved in Boundary Bootcamp. All right. No more questions on that side. Let's see what we got on Facebook or on Instagram. When people are disrespectful, probably due to your people pleasing, can you give us a good way to address disrespect with a boundary? Yes. A great example, when you are feeling that somebody's being disrespectful for you, first is to say, ouch. So when you're communicating in the moment on a boundary, the best thing to do is if somebody bounces up against it is to just say, hey, ouch, like what you're saying is not going to work for me. So if somebody's being disrespectful, the way that I would handle that is to say, hey, I'm not feeling great about how you're communicating with me. Are you meaning to sound disrespectful? Right. What you're doing is two parts. Number one, saying, ouch, that hurts. Second, you're giving them the benefit of the doubt and asking whether they meant to do it or not, which is a really awesome way of living, right? Because you're giving them the benefit of the doubt. I see Miss Jade is with us, by the way. So that would be the first thing. There's three answers that can come from that. So if you say, ow, you hurt me, or, hey, I'm feeling disrespected. Are you meaning to do that? And the answer is yes, I am meaning to disrespect you. Okay, great. Well, then you need to realize, then you have to ask the question, like, what did I do that made them so fucking mad that they wanted to disrespect me? Number one. And then number two, the other answer could be no, like, oh, I'm really not meaning that. Okay, well, then you accept the apology and you move on with your life. The third is you're being too sensitive, and that's probably a person that you don't want in your life. But communicating a boundary in the moment is very simple. It's just like, ow, that hurts, or just owning it, like, hey, I'm feeling this. Are you meaning to do that? By asking those questions in order, you kind of make people flex their empathy muscle, and it helps to disarm the conflict in many ways. So I hope that that's helpful. Let's see. Kay, yeah, people are probably going to think there's something wrong if you stop people pleasing. They're going to think there's something wrong with them very specifically, which wouldn't be a surprise, right? So they're going to think you're mad at them, etc. So it's just kind of part of the deal. You created a bit of a Leviathan, my friend. If you've been at it for long enough, you'll just it's going to be something hard to fix, but it's not impossible. Who else has a question? Let's see. Stefan, there he is. Also, is it normal to have a feeling or sense of grief while coming to the realizations about yourself and the difficult people you've been pleasing? Stefan, yes, it is. When you change anything, there's kind of a normal grieving process that you go through. And it's not, there's kind of these old narratives like when you change, you have to let the old you die. Well, no, the old you's still there. It just grew. And when you grow out of certain behaviors, you grow out of certain friendships, it hurts a lot sometimes. It's been really helpful for me to understand that most things in life are seasonal. In fact, life itself is seasonal. You're only here for a short period of time. And when you realize that everything is seasonal, everything comes and goes, including you and your life, then you become more adept at handling people walking away. The other thing is that very often my people pleasers who get involved in the Boundary Boot Camp don't do a great job of cultivating friendships, and the reason that is because they kind of have this belief that like once you make a friend, they're friend for life, and that's not accurate. Friends come and go. There's a precious few, of course, with which you should hold on, but for the most part, you need to constantly be trying new things and meeting new people in order to continually cultivate friendships, especially if you're in your late 20s to your and on. It's you don't make friends in school. You make friends doing stuff. People ask me all the time, how do I make friends? Well, you go out and be around people. It's it's actually quite simple. You go out and say hi. It used to be really interesting. I wonder how that'd be an interesting exercise. Stefan, you got me off on a tangent, and I just created a new exercise. Here's a preview. I'm going to do the kids friendship challenge, because when we were kids, how'd you make friends? You walked up to somebody and said, "Do you want to be friends?" So part of the reason that you have a sense of grief and realization about yourself, people you've been pleasing, is like some of them are exiting, and the version of you that exists now is different. So you don't really know that guy. So just maybe ask yourself if you want to be friends with you, and then go ask some other people too. So hope this helps. All right. Who else has a question? Anybody else? All right. Let's see. I don't see any more questions. Oh, there's one. Curious. What are your thoughts on how to focus and prioritize the steps to begin? If a person is excited and ready to work on no longer people pleasing, how do they juggle all the advice? So, Stacy, that's a great question. How do you? I think what you're really asking me is how do I juggle all the bullshit about this on the internet? And because you're probably watching a lot of content, you're probably watching a lot of my content, and if you're watching my content, you're seeing others, and everybody's got their own thoughts on how to stop people pleasing. The best thing to do is pick one that you resonate with and stick with that, right? And remember that change doesn't happen overnight. No matter how much you listen, no matter how much you watch, no matter how much you scroll through people pleasing content, you are not going to change until you change. And the only way that you're ever going to change is by taking action, right? So the steps that I would outline would probably happen in the Boundary Boot Camp, or join a group of some kind. So again, that would be the thing I would say is look at getting involved with people that are doing similar kind of work. And listen, not everybody on the internet's for you, and they're not always correct. So if you want to get involved with us, of course, just go to myboundarybootcamp.com and sign up. That's the easiest way. So let's see, we've got a few more people on here. People are coming and going as we sit and talk. I'm going to end this in about 2 more minutes because we're getting short on questions. Let's see. All right. Don't see anybody over on the stream. Let's see if we got anybody on Instagram. I'm currently on a break in my relationship as a people pleaser. I'm wanting to make sure I use this time to grow. Any advice? Yeah. If you're on a break, just stay on the break. And probably you're not on a break. X's are X's for a reason. So let that be real. Would be the first thing, is like maybe stop calling it a break. And let it be, not time off, just time for you. And if you end up getting back together, then great. And if you don't, you don't. I would stop calling it a breakup, call it a breakup. I think that will be the most helpful thing you can do. Can you share the format of Boundary Boot Camp? Looking forward to understanding, are there live meetings versus asynchronous community and self-reflection? Okay, so can I share the format of the Boundary Boot Camp? The Boundary Boot Camp is about 1.5 hours a week of live teaching with me. Generally, I do about an hour of teaching, and then I do, kind of a 30-minute Q&A after every call. There is a community that is involved in that as well. It is free for the first 90 days if you sign up now, and it is $30 or $27 a month after that. So there's live meetings, there are homework assignments, there is an online coursework. So everything's also written down and put into PowerPoints for you. It's also built into a course that is, branded just for you guys, as well as there's assessments and all kinds of things that I've built into it. So the community itself is very cool because a lot of alumni from former boot camps are in there, and they're really awesome and helpful humans. So I think it's probably the coolest part of boot camp. Right now, the Boundary Boot Camp is on sale until tomorrow afternoon, or tomorrow evening, I guess. So until Monday night, Boundary Boot Camp is for sale for $197. It goes up to $247 after that, and we'll be closing the doors, next week. So that said, if you want to get involved in it, now is the time to do that, because it's it's at an awesome price. You get 90 days free of the community, which is really cool. You get all the live videos. And you get access to the Boundary Boot Camp for life. So you'll be able to go back and revisit it anytime you want, at no additional cost to you. And everybody that works with us does know that there's tons of homework. Not tons of homework, but the homework assignments feel like they're tons because there's a lot of weight to them. And they're really exciting, but also kind of torturous. And they are that way on purpose. So thank you for asking that. I'm really excited to have people in the Boundary Boot Camp this time. I'm hoping that we have, 300 to 500 people is my hope, but we've never done that before. So we'll see what happens on this particular launch. And we're very excited about it. My whole team, one of them is on this call, Miss Jade, who I see you there, and I appreciate you showing up like a lot. So thank you for being here. With all that said, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Boundary Boot Camp starts December 7th. It is $197 today and tomorrow, going up to $247 after that. And it's a riot. It's a live 8-week intensive with me teaching it live, doing Q&As live, coaching live, and in the community curating live. So this whole thing is about getting us all together and moving in the right direction as we can. So get in there and do the thing. Go to myboundarybootcamp.com. Sign up today. At least do this for yourself. Give yourself a chance to really have an awesome time, and give yourself a chance to have a really awesome holiday. And you will change. It's a game changer of a program. And there are people that are on this call right now that are saying it is an awesome program. So join up. There's Mike, who's right here, just said that. He's been a part of this, multiple times. And he's, a friend of the program as well. So I'm really excited to have Mike come back. I'm really excited to see all my old alums here in the next couple of weeks. So if you're watching and you guys have been with me long enough, thank you for playing along, and thank you for being my friends. And I look forward to meeting all of the new people that joined up with Boundary Boot Camp. So thanks for joining today. And we will look forward to seeing you soon.